All right, Delhi here. Very lucky to have a special guest on the Delhi podcast. Rick Croy, head coach of men's basketball at Cal Baptist, took over in 2013 after 3 years assistant coach at St. Mary's. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Del.
Now, I want to go back to that time when you were leaving St. Mary's and the interview process, what that was like at CBU and what attracted you to the CBU job.
Yeah, I still remember you and I were competing together in Dayton. It was like the first four, the play-in game in the NCAA tournament, and I got a text that the Cal Baptist job was opening and that they may have some interest in the Croy family. And so then we ended up, we beat Middle Tennessee State and then got a chance to compete against Memphis in Detroit. And then as soon as we got back to California, had some really good conversations with the administrators, our athletic director, Micah Parker, and our vice president, Kent Dacus. And immediately I was extremely impressed with their commitment and that they wanted men's basketball to be a really integral component of CBU continuing to grow as an institution. So, and then it was kind of a funny story because I got sick. I got really sick. Like I was as sick as I'd ever been. And I was supposed to go down for an interview and I couldn't go. And I had to wait a couple of days. And then finally I got up one morning. I told Jamie, I'm like, I don't think I can get down there. And she's like, you got to get down there. You got to go see what it's all about. So got on the plane, came down, met with everyone down here, and was blown away by what was happening on this campus. And again, their vision for men's basketball. And it was a fairly quick process. But just the commitment level was everything that I was looking for. And nothing was promised in terms of us going Division I. At the time we were Division II, but even with that, you could tell what they wanted for their men's basketball program. And I thought our family would be a really good fit for what they were looking for.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And then, after you get the job, where does your mind go and how do you start preparing to take over a program? What do you focus on when you first come in? What do you try to put in place with your coaching staff, the culture you want to build before the players, I guess, even you meet with them?
Yeah, you hit it, staff. And for me, I was unbelievably excited because I had worked with guys that I loved working with at Citrus College at the junior college level. And that was a special experience. But the thing about coaching at junior college was that the level really only afforded – there was really only one guy could get paid, and there was no upward mobility for the assistants. And we always dreamed about working together, all of us at a higher level, and CBU put that opportunity in place. So it was fun to get on the phone with those guys and say, hey, let's get the band back together and let's go see if we can make a move at CBU and do something together again competitively. And was really fortunate that those guys jumped all in, but that was fun. So it starts with your staff.
Yeah.
And fortunately for us, we had built a culture at Citrus College, and then we all got to kind of go our separate ways and learn from really great leaders. And for me, I got to go to St. Mary's, and Randy Bennett's great at many things, but I would put at the top of that list program building. He's a great program builder and leader. And although I had some experience as a head coach, it was great for me to see how he went about things. And I had, now I've had the opportunity to bring so many of those things that I've learned with me. So it started with our staff.
Yeah.
And then, it's all about your people. We got a chance to meet with the guys that were here, and we were really, really blessed because there were 4 guys that were going to be seniors. We got the job in April. And all 4 of those guys were so hungry to win. There were a lot of winning programs at CBU, from baseball to swimming to soccer. There were so many thriving programs. And these guys wanted to be they wanted to be proud, walking around campus and feel like men's basketball, that they were leaders on this campus as well. So they were all about the team, and from there we just started to build our standards with those guys and how we were going to go about building something special. But those guys were going to be at the forefront of that. And then we had to get to work recruiting, and we were really lucky with that first class of guys. But, thinking back those first couple months, those are great memories. I mean, things are going a million miles an hour, but it's when you reflect back, those are some of the best times.
Yeah. How much were you prepared, I guess, from, like the time you're at St. Mary's, previous experiences, like writing down things, knowing that when you get this next opportunity to be a head coach, because I think everybody that knew you at St. Mary's knew that, eventually you were going to get a head coaching job somewhere else. Like, what did you do to prepare yourself and have in place so you could hit the ground running like that?
Yeah, I started keeping a journal. I kept a journal in college, just kind of my experiences. And I knew probably when I was a sophomore in college that I wanted to coach at the college level. I was, blessed to have a great coaching mentor in high school, and Frank Alaco Sr. And so there were all these things that, came about in my life that made me want to coach in college. So I was always keeping a journal. It wasn't really a coaching journal. It was just a life journal, but I got used to the habit of writing things down and trying to learn in that way. And then when I started coaching at UC Riverside, I kept a coaching journal, and I was just writing, all the time, every day about leadership and X's and O's, or strategies and recruiting and everything I was learning. I was learning from so many great coaches, and I still go back to those journals.
Yeah.
Because, there's so many things coming at you now that you almost have to go back to the things that you thought were important when you originally started. So the journaling really helped. And then I think having the opportunity to be a head coach at a really young age, I was 27 when I got the job at Citrus, and made a ton of mistakes, but we were learning through those mistakes. And we had, just incredible learning opportunities there, from, figuring out how we wanted to put in an offense, to recruiting, to team building, to, working through tough stretches and handling adversity. And then going to St. Mary's and being part of something really, really special. And that flywheel was already spinning. And there was such great leadership in place with the players, and to be able to see a 4-year program. I think that was important for me, to see a 4-year program and what Coach Bennett had put in place to allow those seniors to carry the program. And there were so many things from that experience that I thought, I know I can move those things forward. So the CBU opportunity came at a great time for our family. My kids were all in. My wife loves to compete, and we always wanted to be in a community where we felt like we could bring the community with us and we could do it all together. And Riverside and CBU was just that. So the timing of it was perfect.
Yeah. What are some of the things, I guess, you go back and look at your journal now and you're like, man, I'm going to do this differently now? And what are some things that you think will stay the same no matter what?
I think the things that will always stay the same are like the basic standards of your program. Like even when I look back at my first journal entries, listening. Like, I think you've got to set the tone and really define the standard of what listening looks like in your program. That we're going to look each other in the eye. It sounds so simple, but I think when you look at really healthy programs and thriving programs, the listening from all parties is at a high level. Like, you look at a winning team in the NBA, the huddles, everyone's locked in, and guys are communicating, and the listening that's where it starts to me. You have to, that piece has to be in place. And the guys in our program from day one knew that all the guys on our staff are going to lead. They can learn from everybody on our staff. We're also going to listen to the players. And, that's really important in our program. So I think listening would be the first standard. And then the next thing that I think you have to start to shape is the work ethic.
Yeah.
And that feeling, the confidence that comes when you feel like you're earning something. And for us at CBU, that started with getting the guys up in the morning and, really getting them to believe that champions wake up early and that those are habits that they can bring forward with them for the rest of their lives. And when we got the job at CBU, it was neat. I stole this from Jim Harbaugh. We bought all the guys blue-collared shirts. And Harbaugh did this at Stanford, and the concept came from the fact that everyone has lineage in their family, somebody in their family that worked like a blue-collar job, whether it was your father, your grandfather, an uncle, it doesn't matter. At some point in your family, somebody was really laying the foundation for your family, either the Dellavedova, the Croy family, whatever family you're part of, for you to be in the position that you're in now. And so we got the guys blue-collared shirts, and it would just say Rick or Matthew or whatever the guy's name is, and they loved it. And we would lift weights in those shirts. And the guys actually, they wanted to warm up in them one night. We didn't do it, but I wish we had now when I think back. But, that the work ethic is huge, and those guys feeling like, we're earning it. We're earning success. And I think, I go back to when I was at Citrus, that was the first time I read the book Good to Great. And our first two teams at Citrus, we were good. And we were really striving to be great. And it was, somebody had suggested I read that book, and it was the perfect time for me to read it. And there's so many things I reflect back. So many times I reflect back to that book, and I try and go back and read it every year. But one of the things that Jim Collins wrote about was you got to have the paradoxical blend of confidence and humility. And our program needed confidence. And I thought the first place we were going to go get that confidence was from our work. We had to believe that we were outworking people. And then you have the humility that the great programs, everyone's working hard. So, you kind of have that insecurity. You develop that insecurity where you don't want to be outworked, and, it's a healthy paranoia. And so we started to build that daily through our standards. And, again, when you talk to the guys that were on those teams, they talk about our walks from the locker room to the weight room. That's really where we laid the foundation for the program.
Yeah. And I mean, it comes to a question I wanted to ask you about how else you built and developed competitiveness.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to the journal, which is like when I was in high school, I loved playing for Coach Alaco. We kept score.
Yeah.
Every day there was a score, and either maroon or gold won. And it wasn't just based on, the opinion of the coaches of who was playing. Like, your job was to make your team win, and the scoreboard was lit up, and you really learned how to compete. And that's how we started with our program, running the mile, testing on the bench press. We have a thing called the Gladiator Competition that we do. We brought the Ironman with us from St. Mary's, but it's all about showing up every day and competing, and that there are outcomes. And at the end of the day, the outcome kind of outweighs everything, and there's no excuses. And then we start to try and, get them to understand the same as the classroom. You can't say, hey, this teacher didn't like me, or, that was a tough grade that I got on that paper. At the end of the day, what did you get done? And I think guys love that, coming to practice every day and competing and knowing that, hey, if I'm on blue, my job is to make blue win. If I'm on white, my job is to make white win. And guys start getting in the habit of competing in everything they do. And so really simple ideas, and just staying with it every day. And also recruiting guys that love to compete. And that's why I go back to, we were so lucky with that first group of seniors.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I guess, like, what do you look for in players you recruit now? And has that changed since you, I guess, first got to CBU to now?
I think the first thing is that competitiveness. Guys that like it's really important for them to be good. And what we've found is that if a guy is into team and because I think one thing you have to really evaluate now is our game is, and this isn't necessarily a negative thing. I think guys are working harder than ever. I mean, the amount of time that people are putting into their games, and you can see it on social media, but I think it's real. I think people work really hard, but I think there are guys that work really hard and they're putting chips in, but a lot of times those chips are for themselves. And we want to find guys that are going to work hard and put lots of chips in, but those chips are for the team. And that's the team bank. Yeah. And that we can go access those chips at any time. So we try and find guys that are about the team, but also just have an unbelievable will and belief that they can become great, and they're willing to work at it, and that it's really important to them. Because when I think through all of the great players I've coached, that's kind of the common denominator. And I think when it's really important to guys that are willing to work through stuff and they don't make excuses, they don't point fingers, and they understand, the trajectory of it, that it doesn't have to happen right away. And, I think even about, some of the guys that I was fortunate to coach at St. Mary's, like Youngie is an example, Mitch Young, of a guy that it was really, really important to him to be a good player. Like he came over here and he was not going to leave St. Mary's without making his mark and impacting the program and the team in a really positive way. So we try and find that within our recruiting, and the best players that we've had here at CBU have been just that. Michael Smith was a guy, he's the all-time leading scorer at CBU and one of the most competitive people that I've ever been around. And Mike was not highly recruited. He was like a 6'3" power forward in high school. He wasn't very athletic. He couldn't dunk. But when we immersed him in our culture in year one at CBU, and you got into the conditioning tests, and you got into playing 4-on-4 full court every day in practice, you could see that his will, his competitive will, was unmatched, and that he was going to die before, somebody beat him. And ultimately, he was going to become a great player. So we try and find that as often as we can.
And I mean, how do you find that in a recruit when you're, going to watch high school or AAU and they're playing, 3 or 4 games a day, and it doesn't really matter who wins or loses, guys are trying to get recruited. Like, how do you measure that? Either on the phone with somebody or on a recruiting visit or by just watching them?
Yeah, I think it's great to see them in different environments and really try and find out, about their leadership. So, some guys are in great AAU programs and they're playing against great competition, and you'll see them in those moments where they have to rise and they have to meet the challenge. And then there's other guys that aren't as fortunate, to play in those powerhouse AAU programs, and they may be playing in an area with less talent, but you can go see them in their high school setting, and you have an opportunity to talk to the high school coach, and they'll tell you, hey, this is a special young man that's, he's going to work at it and work at it. So you try and talk to as many people as you can. And then, we found too that now the rules put you in a position to, more often than not, you can have a guy work out with your guys. And that's been huge for us, just to put a guy in our culture and see how he gets along with everyone, and, see if, see how hard they play and how much they love to compete. I think that's been key. But I think finding that unique competitiveness is so important, because, that's the difference. When you really go through the great players in every conference, most of them are outliers as competitors.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I guess, does it change at all when you're evaluating some, like a transfer? Because I mean, there's been a huge rise in people transferring either through like the graduate program or trying to leave to get more playing time or get more touches? How do you evaluate transfers and that competitiveness and ability to deal with adversity?
Yeah, I think brutal honesty in the recruiting process and really trying to figure out what they're looking for. And I do think one thing that can be influenced and enhanced by your transfers is a sense of appreciation. You know, a lot of times the guys that have transferred into our program have helped our young guys because our young guys only know CBU basketball. Mm-hmm. And they may not have a great sense of, I think CBU is a special place to play. I think our university does a tremendous job taking care of our student athletes, the housing, the food, all the little touches to make it special for our guys, even the support, the crowds, all those things. And sometimes when you have a lot of young guys, they don't know it. They don't know it any other way. And you'll have transfers come in and they say like, hey man, you guys need to appreciate this. So the appreciation level in your locker room can rise just from the different perspectives. And that can be a great thing. And I think, you know, you can find guys that maybe didn't get the opportunity they wanted at another school and they feel a little bit more appreciated at your place. And so, you know, you don't get it right every time, and the student athletes don't get it right every time. But I think when you really know what you stand for as a program, you know, you got a chance to find the right guys.
Yeah. And I mean, the best teams are defined by guys that own their roles. I know that's something you've talked about, not just like playing your role or accepting your role, but owning your role. How do you get to that point? Because I know no matter what team you've been on in the preseason, everybody comes back from the summer working on different parts of their game, thinking they're going to improve in this area and that area. But then it comes to the season and their role, you know, might not be as much as what they wanted. How do you get guys to buy in and own their role?
Yeah, I think that's a great conversation, because I'd like to hear about some of the great teams you've played on as well in that respect. Because my father-in-law, Tom Shine, has said this to me for years and years. He always says a team can't truly take off until the roles are developed, defined, and owned. And I do think that takes some time. Like, I don't know if you can come into September and start defining roles. I think you got to get into the heart of your practices in October. And then oftentimes for us, you even have to get to the competition. You got to get either some scrimmages or some games under your belt. And I think if we looked at our seasons here at CBU, what T. Shine says couldn't be more true, that our teams have taken off after the roles have kind of played out. And so we've developed some things. We create role cards now. Yeah. So we'll take a card, laminated card of, you know, a picture of a guy, and we'll write out what we think their role is and how we think they can make our program the absolute best it can be. And before we put the final touches on the card, we'll have role meetings with guys, and we'll get to it. And one of the things we always say is that successful communication is not about agreement, but it's about understanding. And sometimes we disagree. You know, sometimes the player thinks he can do more. Sometimes as a coaching staff, we think the player can do more. So we try and get it to where guys understand what their role for this team it doesn't mean that it's that role for the next 4 or 5 years. But for this team, this is the role they need to own for this team to max out. And I do think that takes a lot of real conversation. But I think ultimately guys appreciate that honesty. And I think when a player knows where they stand and where the coach stands, then you got a chance for that player to thrive. So we've really worked hard at that. And I think it brings up kind of something interesting I was talking about with some other coaches last week. There was a really good sports psych coach that came in and talked to our athletic department. This was a couple years ago, and I took a lot of notes. And one of the things he said was that a player can never outperform his own belief system. Meaning, if a player had a 7 talent, but his belief was a 5, he can only play to a 5 and compete to a 5. But if a guy, and this is where I come back to Michael Smith in our program, Mike had really good basketball talent. Like he knew where the ball was going. It may not have been athleticism the way everyone else defines athleticism, but in terms of getting steals, tip-ins, offensive rebounds, playing lanes, in my opinion, he was a pretty athletic player. But most people wouldn't view him in that way. But I would say his talent was like a 7 or 8, but his belief was a 10. And the guy played to a 10, you know. And I think where it gets interesting on roles is sometimes, you know, you may think a guy's belief in what he can do in that particular year is too high for where he's at in the journey. And I think the only way to get to that is conversation and everyone trying to be real with each other. And, you know, then again, I think your team has a chance to take off. But, you know, I think about, you know, your NBA championship team. To me, that's a team where guys own their roles. Was that something that did you guys have role meetings? Was that laid out by the coaching staff, or did that play out through 40 games?
I think it's something that's always evolving during the year because there's so many games, there's injuries, trades, different things like that. But I'll never forget the first training camp when LeBron came in and he brought everyone into the film room before training camp started, and he had his phone there and he's standing up the front and he went through every player on the team, like what he expects from them, what their strengths are. And he's kind of going around the different players, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, is he going to say something about me? I wonder if he even, you know, knows what I can do, or, you know, what my game is. And he eventually got to me and was like 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, picks up full court every time, plays super hard. And I was like, wow, like that makes you feel invincible. And that was just the beginning. But I think definitely throughout the year, your role can change depending on what's happening with the injuries. And I guess, do you go and have meetings throughout the year when injuries or you know, with form or how guys are playing, and do they evolve throughout the year very often?
Yeah, they do. And the other thing with the role cards that we want is transparency. So we want everyone to see each other's role cards.
Yeah.
So that they have to own that. But I was just thinking about that team, Tristan Thompson, great example.
Yeah.
Because to me now there's a lot of bigs that want to do a lot of different things, and some guys have the versatility and they can do it, but you know, for him to own his role and go get that ball.
Yeah. That's the example of somebody owning their role. I mean, just an absolute animal on the offensive glass. And a lot of times he wasn't even looking to go back up with it. He was just kicking it back out to somebody else and he'd go get another rebound. It was incredible to see that. Well, an interesting thing, I've met with Nick Maxwell, Aussie football player, who I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but something he's involved with the high performance at Collingwood. They have similar things where players have their roles and it's more defined on position than individually. And each player ranks or rates out of 10 how well they perform the different aspects of their role each game. And then the coaches also do it. So each game, and it goes on a whiteboard, and they see, like, or the whole team can see what the player's ranking, what the coach's ranking is, and to see if there's a disconnect, if they're on the same page. And he also works with the leadership group, and they have individually their own things that they work on, whether it's communication or like how they stood up in the big moments when There's certain big moments in a game when the other team's making a run, or things aren't going right. Like, how is my leadership in those moments? And it's something that I thought was really interesting, because it's not something that happens a lot over here, where there's that, I guess, level of communication and measuring every single game of how well you performed in relation to the team. And I know it's a different sport, so it's not, apples for apples, but it's just interesting perspective.
Yeah, no, it is. It's like for us, we talk about in our culture, the most important thing is, number one is being emotionally ready to compete. Number two is execution. But we feel like if we're emotionally ready to compete as a program, that we've got a chance every night to perform well. And we always say, if we're on balance as a program, we've got a great chance to do that. If we're off balance, and I think through our 7 years at CBU, if our locker room's ever been off balance, it's hard to hit number one, which is being emotionally ready to compete. And that usually comes back to roles. If there's 3 guys that want somebody else's role and they're not owning what they need to be doing, it's tough. So that's why we really try and drill down on that. And guys understand that their roles can grow each year. And I think that's the best journey, is that when a guy's role evolves each and every year with their leadership, with the contributions they're making on the floor, even with their skill set. Like for us, Dejon Davis is a great story. Led the WAC and rebounding these last 2 years, back-to-back seasons. And when he started with us, he was a 5-man. And when we were doing our shooting drills, when he was a freshman, he would shoot from 16 feet. Well, then we wanted him to shoot the 3, but when we started keeping the numbers, he always wanted to go back to 16 feet. We had to talk him into shooting the 3. And it's just a neat story, because you talk about a blue-collar work ethic and a great attitude. He was the best in those 2 areas. And then his senior year, on senior night, he hits 5 threes against Seattle. But his role kept growing and his game kept evolving, but it was like at the perfect rate, and all his chips were going towards the team. And, obviously you're not going to hit that with every guy, but, I think if your locker room is on balance and guys can own their roles, and then you got a chance to have a really rewarding experience,
Yeah. How do you develop leadership in individuals, like in the players and also in the assistant coaches? Because I know that's important to you as well.
A couple different ways. I think the first one that we try and do really consistently is develop vocal leadership. So we try and create throughout the year, and it really starts with our summer camps. We try and create as many opportunities for guys to be in speaking opportunities. And we try to pull them out of their comfort zones if that's not something they're comfortable with. But I always say, and I fall victim to this all the time, but I always say, when you're forced to speak, you go from being a critic to a leader. And when I say I fall victim to it, I still find myself, I'll walk out of church, or, get done watching a podcast or something, or, watching an interview, and I think, gosh, why did he say that? Or, and you find yourself being critical, but yet if you're forced, to be the one in that leadership role, everything changes. The paradigm shifts dramatically, and there's such an appreciation for the leadership. So we try throughout the season, whether it's talking to young people or, maybe a speaking opportunity in front of our team, asking our guys to share about their lives, present something that they're passionate about. The more we can create those opportunities, guys' leadership grows. exponentially. So that's been really good. And then I think the other thing is just the simple definition of leadership in our program is just to make somebody else better. Because I think a lot of people see leadership as, that you have to be the alpha, or, you have to have an incredibly consistent, commanding voice all the time. And, we try and share with guys, there's lots of different ways to lead. I think back to your team that dethroned Gonzaga, and you were the voice in the huddles, but Mitch Young was a great leader on that team as well. And Mitch did a lot of his leadership through friendship. I mean, if you're on a team with Mitch, he has your back. And, that's a form of leadership. So we try and break down all the different forms of leadership, but we're really honest with the fact that I do think improving your voice, I think it's important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think there's a lot of different ways to lead, and they're not often talked about. Can you give like a few more examples of actions that you see of leadership in your program that I guess people might overlook as leadership, or might not expect, or might fly under the radar?
Yeah, I think professionalism, I think about Milan Aqua, was MVP of the WAC for us this year, has had 2 great seasons at CBU. His professionalism with how he approaches his work, when he gets to practice, his work after practice, his diligence in the weight room, his diligence in the training room, his work with our trainers, everything's done at a very, very professional level. And our guys see that, our young guys see that. It's not happenstance. It's not luck. It's not talent. It's professionalism in the most mundane things that you can possibly think about. It's getting his free throws, 100 free throws after every practice. It's keeping the numbers. It's trying to win shooting drills. It's watching the film when it becomes very tedious. So I think, there's a lot of guys now, everyone wants to play professionally, and those are great goals. And we want guys that want to be pros, but to have that professional example in your program is key. So that's an example of leadership. And then I think the other thing where guys can really demonstrate leadership is how they handle adversity. And Jordan Heading was the best example of that in our program. He was a great, great player for us. But back-to-back seasons, he started off the year shooting the ball horrifically. And everyone in our program knew he could shoot the ball. And they knew that he could make baskets. And he never made excuses. He just kept coming back to work, and he knew that the season would play out. And he's one of the best I've ever been around at keeping his head and keeping his poise when things weren't going his way. And I think that's another great form of leadership that guys could learn from.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Who are, we see the huddles on TV, but they're all edited. Who are the top 3 leaders that you've been around, teammates in the NBA?
In those huddles?
Period. In all aspects, how their approach, professionalism, ability to, help others get on board.
Yeah. I'll give some under the radar guys that you wouldn't expect, rather than the ones, everyone, always talks about, like LeBron, obviously leading by example and the work he puts in and things like that. But I would say Mike Miller, James Jones.
What made Miller special?
An incredible ability to connect with everybody, anybody and everybody, whether it was players, coaches, trainers, ball boys, anybody. He'd walk into a room and just pump you up, just by being himself, always positive. And I think knowing that he's had so much success in his career, but he'll, you know, sit down and have a chat about whatever with you and take a real interest. I think I was in my second year when I was teammates with the killer, and he just had an incredible positivity that you couldn't help. Like you might be tired or sore, you know, coming into the game, and he walks into the locker room, you're like, you know what, I'm actually feeling pretty good tonight. And that was just fun to be around, a fun teammate. And then James Jones, I would say, you know, wouldn't say a whole lot,
Yeah.
but when he did, he would speak the truth. Oftentimes when, you know, sometimes people wouldn't want to hear it, and it was in tough moments when the pressure was on or things weren't going well. And I think him having the experience on successful teams, and you know, he wasn't playing a ton at Cleveland, but he was all in, keeping a pulse on the team and saying what needed to be said. I think that was great leadership. And I think that's something that a lot of those veterans that have provided, you know, to me and a lot of other guys around the league.
What was Jason Terry? I've always been a Jason Terry fan because he was class of '95. What was he like as a leader?
Incredible energy and a lot of fun to play with and compete with. And I remember it was game 6 at Milwaukee, and we were down a lot. And me and him, he's like 39, 40 years old at this point, and we're both picking up full court and run and trap and forcing some turnovers. He's always pumping up the crowd,
yeah,
and bringing incredible energy, and just his competitiveness and just his love for the game, I think always rubs off on people. And whether it's talking the game, teaching the game, or just out there competing when he you know, got his chance to play.
How about your leadership on the Boomers? Who have you learned the most from?
I mean, I think the Boomers program that's what makes it special, is the leadership from all different kinds of guys, and it just kind of keeps getting passed on down the line. And when I first came in, it was like Matt Nielsen, Dave Anderson, and Nelly was he's one of my favorite captains that I've played for. And he, you know, I think I was 20 or 21 coming in, and he's 31, he's probably older, 33 by then. And he also had that special ability to be able to connect with everybody, whether it was the coaches, the players that he's known, or the new young guys coming in. And I think he had a great balance of getting along with everyone, but also you know, speaking the truth and keeping everyone in line and on task as well. And that was a lot of fun to learn from him.
How old were you when you played in your first Olympics?
21. It was before my junior year, and that was an incredible experience.
So your goal is 5, playing 5 Olympic games?
21, 25, give me 30, 34, 38. That's always been my goal. I'd have to be 38. So I got to keep taking care of the body, but you know, there's nothing better for me than representing Australia, and especially at the Olympic Games. It's just something I've dreamed of as a kid, and it's the ultimate. So it's tough that with it being postponed, but I know all the boys are working out hard, and it's something that's keeping us all going during this time to, stay in shape and keep working on our bodies so we can be ready to go when we get back into it.
How about, I know this is like, if you reflect, it's hard to assess or measure, but if you compare that first Olympics to now preparing for this one, how has the pressure changed in respect to the pursuit of the medal? Is that something that's palpable, that is in the meetings? You guys are consistently talking about it, or is it just everyone knows?
No, it's definitely something we talk about, and I think there was definitely a bit of a shift, and I think the leadership of Paddy, Joey, Bogues, Bainesy, talking about it, and the sense of belief around the group that we know we can compete with anyone, we know we can beat anyone on any given day. And I think a lot of that comes with all of us having success in the playoffs and competing either with or against these guys that we're going to be playing against. And I mean, there was definitely, I would say, more pressure in Rio than London, but it was a good kind of pressure, and knowing that we can go out there and potentially win a gold medal. And I guess that's what makes it so tough, falling short in Rio and at the World Cup in China. But we have another opportunity next year now, and I'm excited to get that group back together.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, just getting back to CBU, how do you balance the pressure of winning games with the patience and I guess empathy required to develop and grow young men and young leaders?
That's a great question.
I think Cape sent that one through, so I can't take credit for that.
Yeah, because there's the results matter, right? I mean, to grow your program, to build the following that we have here in Riverside in the Inland Empire, you've got to win games. But I think your culture has to be bigger than that. Our mantra this year was greater than, and that was put in place by our seniors. And that was to remind us that the journey is greater than basketball.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we do is we take every Wednesday off the floor to do our thing we called Excellence Hall, and that's where we really build leadership. But we try and make it like it's, Wednesdays are all about getting better in other areas, and we bring in speakers from all different arenas of life, pastors, businessmen, guys that are playing professionally, so they can learn from as many different people as possible. And that's been really big for us to constantly remind ourselves that I think the most important thing that we're all shaping and building is the leadership. Yeah. Then we also try and think you got to enjoy it. You got to enjoy it. And, I think you have to, we talk about defining fun, and we define fun as trying to do something that's really hard and do it well. But, everyone's going to be at a different place in that journey. Sometimes you get a freshman that's homesick, and, you try and have some things in place so that you can be there with them and identify if somebody's struggling. So we're really working at our brotherhood and, making sure that everyone knows, because a lot of our guys are from all over the world, and they don't have their support systems close to them. And so everyone, we try and build a real sense that everyone's there for each other. And then hopefully you can come back to those things in the biggest moments, and whether you take a tough loss at home, I think those are always the toughest. Everyone knows that winning on the road is really, really difficult, but I think when everything's in place and, you sell out and everyone's there to see the product, and as an athlete or as a coach and as a program, you feel like you didn't come through, it can get the best of you,
Yeah. I mean, how do you deal with, I guess, that stress of the season? Because I know it can be stressful. There's a lot of ups and downs, and with the high expectations and goals you guys set, how do you take care of your mind and body as a coach?
Yeah. And I think the guys are always, the players are always, they're always more resilient than the coaches. Like when we get back to practice, I think the best way for them is they get amnesia. I mean, we get back to practice and they're getting ready for the next competition. I think the coaches probably struggle a lot more than the guys. For me, there's certain things that I have to do, and I've learned how important those things are, probably more and more each year, and I've put some things in place. Like I don't watch film at home, and I know that's very different than most coaches. And you could make the argument, well, it'd be more efficient to bring it home and be at peace and be able to do that there. But I'd rather, be here for a few late nights, get it done so that when I go home, I can create some separation. Working out for me is huge. Trying to be disciplined with my sleep during the season has been really, really impactful. So I just kind of have to put these non-negotiables in place, try and take guilt-free breaks. Sundays, are for family. And then you got to kind of blend it all. And I'm really lucky that our family loves it. Like they love college basketball, and they're all in, and I think that's important. That's where I think, like the NBA, the travel is so much different with what you're doing. We don't have to take that many trips. So you can get your routine pretty regimented. But that routine has been key for me to keep my stress in the right place. Because I know that when my stress is good, I got a chance to be a much better leader.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's the toughest part of the NBA is the travel and not having a consistent routine week to week. You have to find routines in just the days of the week, and I think there's three or 4 days of the week in the season. It's game day, practice day, or off day, with the travel mixed in.
So you guys now, from when you first got in the league, the model now is if you guys play, let's say you play the Lakers on Wednesday and you're going to play at Sacramento. You're going to play in LA Wednesday night and you're going to play at Sacramento on a Friday. You guys would stay the night and then sleep in?
It depends. So I would say since I've first come in, there's a lot less back-to-backs. So the leagues, tried to get more space in between those games, which is great for the recovery, game to game, because, back-to-backs are tough, especially for the guys that are playing high minutes. But at the same time, if you play a back-to-back, the next day is an automatic off day. So you have less of those. And then as for the travel in between on the road, it just depends on the city and time of the game. So if you're in LA, that's a city you might stay over and get a practice there and then fly out the next day.
Yep.
So it just depends on that. I want to ask you about analytics, and there's a big emphasis on that these days. I mean, especially in the NBA. Has that happened in college, and if so, how do you incorporate that into the CBU program?
Yeah, I mean, massive trend and movement with analytics, and I think that's again, I think where you go back to when you first started in coaching, you have to fall back on the things that, as you were developing your leadership, especially in a head coaching role. When I think back to Citrus, I mean, there weren't any analytics. I mean, it was wins and losses and shooting percentages and turnovers. And now, I mean, it's a lot. There is a lot coming at you, and there's a lot available from programs to information to, the stuff on synergy. And for us, we tried to get it to a place that fits with our program. And we've got an assistant that works primarily with our offense, an assistant that works primarily with our defense, and then another assistant that works for the most part with our rebounding. And, we've tried to get analytics that we understand and that can create confidence for our guys and that our guys understand. Mm-hmm. For me, I always come back to, I had written down in my journal at a very early stage in my coaching career, I wanted a team that played exceptionally hard defensively and then a team that played with great confidence on offense. And keep trying to come back to that. Great effort and commitment defensively and great confidence on offense. And there have been times when the analytics can kind of knock you off of that track if you're not careful. So we've just tried to get it to a very manageable place. I think there may be some analytics that's just for the coaches that you don't bring to the players. Because I think a lot of times your meeting time is never what you think it's going to be. Like when we go on our coaches retreat and you're planning out all these things and you're putting meetings in place and things that you want to do for the guys. And then you get to it, you get to the journey, and guys have classes and tutoring and study hall, and they got to get to the training room and recovery, extra lifts, shooting, So then where do you fit all that in? And I think for us, we found that if we're bringing too much at them, it kind of dissolves into nothing. So I think the area that it's helped us the most in is the rebounding. I think when we've really get to the analytics on the rebounding, we found that that's because the analytics are the original intent is to drive improvement. Yeah. Not just a report. And there was definitely a time where I was saying, hey, I want to get more interested. I got to get better. And I still feel like I need to improve in that area. But I think you have to find your own rhythm within the analytics. And it depends on your team too. I think it depends on the strengths of your team. And I think I'll always gravitate back towards trying to get those two things in place. And if the analytics can help us do that, that's great. If it's pulling us away from that and it's actually running interference, then we've got to have great awareness there as well. Yeah. No, I agree. I think it definitely needs to be practical, something that the players understand, and you can't overload. Like you can only focus on so many things, and if you have too many priorities, there isn't any priorities. Like, let me ask you this from a player's perspective. What do you think in the NBA are the top, like if you were as a player, if you were saying, I think these are the top three analytic measurements that we should pay attention to, what would those be? I think shot selection is huge. And in terms of, I think mid-range, like versus like what percentage of your shots are at the paint or 3-point line. We've had some interesting ones where we've measured like what the field goal percentage is with how many passes we've had on offense, what the percentage is on a no pass, 1 pass, 2, 3 plus. I think that's interesting, and it can paint a picture. But I also think sometimes, if you're coaching, they would use it to fit their narrative of needing more ball movement, which I would do as well if I was coaching.
And I think you just flip that and do the same on defense. I mean, are you giving up wide open threes? Are you giving up corner threes? You know, how many shots in the paint are you giving up? Because I think the NBA has just gone that way, and there's obviously a balance. You can't be 100% analytics and just running guys recklessly off the three, because I actually think that leads to more wide open threes. But I think as a base, that's important. I think you need to base your offense and defense around that.
That's what was so interesting about. Did you watch The Last Dance?
Yeah.
I think it was, watching so many Bulls clips in the last couple of weeks. It kind of goes against the grain of some of the current analytics, because they were so good at making 2-point baskets.
Yeah, the spacing just watching it, it was a little bit hard at times, because you're like, what? Why is there so many people in the paint?
Yeah. How about on the boomers? Like, last time you guys competed, how much of your stuff is driven by analytics that's actually being brought to the players?
I mean, we have a very smart group, and I think there's a lot of input back and forth between the players and the coaches, and especially defensively and game planning. And a similar thing when you get to the playoffs, there's a different level of preparation and understanding. And there was things like, if you force a guy this way, like right versus left, like that's 0.3 of a possession, points per possession better for us. If you can force them to take a shot out of a pick and roll versus passing. And we were definitely taking away the three, playing the pick and roll 2-on-2. And it's tough to keep holding your nerve when you've got great players in the pick and roll, especially internationally, like Fournier or some different guys like that are, like shooting that mid-range or that floater. So I think there's always a balance between you. I think when you get to the really great players, you've got to mix it up as well, because they can get comfortable and can't keep giving them the same look. So I think mixing in a trap or something aggressive to throw them off guard and just keep them thinking about something is important. But definitely, I think if you can try to make them shoot that in between shot with a tough contest coming from the side or behind.
Yeah.
Something I want to ask you about: social media, changing pace here.
Yep.
I guess that's something that you didn't have to deal with when you first started coaching, and now it's a big part of the players' lives and also the program. Having a social media presence, and I know you're not running CBU's men's basketball social media, but to help connect with your fans, it can help recruiting. How do you view that?
Yeah, I think social media is interesting because there's so many different elements to it. I think it can. It's such an interesting topic. I mean, there's so many different facets of it, from program building to, leadership. Is it enhancing guys as leaders? Is it hurting them?
Yeah.
Even in these difficult circumstances with the pandemic, I think everyone's trying to get better. And what does that look like? And what do those 1% look like? I think you got to find kind of your teaching points within your program. We've been really fortunate. Like, our guys, I can't think of a guy that we've had that I thought social media was hurting them. I think our guys they've grown up on it. They don't know life without a phone. And it took me a while as a leader to adjust to that, because half my life was without a phone, and then half of it's been with a phone. And these guys don't, the guys that we're coaching now, they don't know life without it. And, you know, I try and remind them that, you know, the phone has to work for you. You don't work for the phone. And if it's dominating you, which happens to all of us. I mean, I've found myself there have been 2-3 hour windows in this pandemic where I literally blink and I don't even know where I was for the last 3 hours, because, you know, I got looking at something which led me to something else, and the next thing I know, that the time was gone, you know. And so it's interesting. I think you have to kind of know where you stand on it as a program, and I think we try and bring it back to professionalism, you know, with your communication, that you're representing the program, and that you should work towards promotion rather than self-promotion, you know. And we talk about that. Like, and I would you know, even in our program, if you were saying a prayer, you would want to pray for others. You know, that would be a really healthy prayer, is to pray for others, not pray for yourself. And that,
yeah,
there's always going to be times on your social media where it's not necessarily boasting, but you're highlighting things that you're doing. That's kind of what it is. But I think when social media is at its best, there's a team element to it, and that you're lifting others up and you're creating an energy and an enthusiasm and excitement for what's going on around you and for other people, and not just like an insane focus on building your own brand.
Yeah.
And, you know, we always say those aren't bad things. Like, that's a real part of our society now, is that social media and how you handle that. And I think guys can learn a lot through that. And I've learned a lot more from our guys than they've learned from me. I've been way behind on social media, and you know, I've learned a lot from you on it, in terms of how you know, you've said it can really help your program. And so I think it's one of those things that's ever evolving. You know, this is interesting. So I was thinking about this a few days ago, because my high school coach, and there are so many things. I mean, my coaching journal is full of things that he taught me, that, you know, his fingerprints are all over our program at CBU, and you know, all the leadership experiences that I've been part of. Is he used to say, and this isn't like a negative, it's not coming from a negative place, but he used to say, you can't be a friend to anyone if you're trying to be friends with everyone. And if you think about it from a negative sense, it's like, well, you know, you should try and you know, connect with as many people as possible. But I allude it more towards, in a positive way, you want to build really, really good relationships, and you want to dig in on those. Like right now in this pandemic, in this situation, I've just enjoyed getting on the phone with people and having good conversations with people that maybe normally you didn't have the time to do those things. Those are old school things. Rather than texting, now you can get on the phone and connect with somebody that you haven't connected with for a while, and dig in on your relationships, the ones that really, really mean, you know, a lot to you. So I think it can, in a positive context, it's a great thing to remember. You know, I try and tell our guys, like when they're going home for Christmas break, because these guys have access to so many people now through social media, and there can be so many things coming at them. I try and remind guys on Christmas break or spring break or whatever it is, spend time with the people that you love most. You know, that don't spread yourself so thin that you forget about your best friends and the people that you've already established great relationships with. So
that's I like that. What about social media and your two kids, Caden and J-Rob? How do you do that? Because that's interesting. That's a different dynamic.
Yep. I made Caden, she's 15 now. when she first got Instagram, she loves Instagram, loves TikTok. But when she first got Instagram, I said, I made her, like, it was like a research project. I said, I want you to find 3 articles, go online, research 3 articles about Instagram that are positive, and then find me 3 articles that are negative. And it was really interesting because she struggled to find the positive articles, and there were negative articles that had all these things that I didn't know what FOMO was, the fear of missing out, until I read through these articles with her. And there's things that you don't even think about that we didn't have to deal with growing up, that, if you, even in basketball, you invite somebody over for a workout, or you go to work out with somebody and you post it, and you didn't have any ill intent. You weren't trying to leave anyone out, but there's somebody that you care about, would have loved to have been part of that workout, and you didn't invite them. So there's all these like relational things that are present that weren't before, and everyone has to find their way within that. So it's been interesting, and I do think, like, their understanding of business and things like that is at a much higher level than my understanding of it was at that age. So there's a lot of great things, but I do think you have to pay attention to the potential negatives.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. That's interesting. When you told me about the research project, I thought that was a really interesting idea, and I think it at least gets kids to think about, oh, there is like positive and negatives to this thing. It's not just something that's fun.
Yep. And it's I would say that sometimes, even in our game, like if you're a player and you got to work a little bit harder, or you got to work probably a lot harder to get a little bit better. And sometimes players now they're used to new things. So if you make a change, or you go to a new program or something like that, it's just more exciting. And for a lot of young people, they're used to a lot of new things. It's not necessarily bad. It's just more what they're used to. And again, there has to be an awareness about all that I think is really important to develop.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk a bit about what your inspiration is, what gets you going, and then also how are you approaching this quarantine, and what are you working on?
I think my inspiration is team. I love being on a team. I love everyone pulling together. I love being on a tight with a group of coaches that, I feel so lucky to be doing what I'm doing, because I'm with my best friends every day, and that really inspires me. I love that my kids get to see me doing something that I'm deeply passionate about. I love that. That inspires me. And then I try and be in touch with a lot of other things that may not be as significant, but music, writing, reading. I love watching documentaries, all those little things. I think those are important, that you have to be in touch with things that inspire you, and you have to work at it. So those are the things that get me going, is being on teams that pull together in tough moments. And I love spending time with guys that I've coached, and reminiscing and those kinds of things, and wanting to create more moments.
Yeah. How important is it, I guess, for J-Rob and Caden to see you working hard, and you setting that example of if you work hard, good things will happen?
I think it's huge. I think one thing that Jamie's always done is she's always created, and where we've tried to do this together, is that, I think now for a lot of kids, everything is about the kids, and that's how a lot of parents do it. And I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong, but for us, the kids have always seen that, hey, we have our workouts, and mom's going to the gym, and you're going to sit there and watch, and that's her time to work out, and they get to see her work hard. They weren't on their phones when they were little, and I believe in those things.
Yeah.
And also being at the dinner table, at a restaurant without phones, those kinds of things, so they can develop socially. But I think seeing the hard work is huge, because it's the most important thing that you can control, and you can find things that you're passionate about, and then work hard at them. So I think critically important. And, coming back to leadership, I think you're asking about leadership in our program, is so many things now are so hyper organized. I think about J-Rob's 13 now. How many times has he been involved in a basketball game where the kids have had to pick the teams?
Yeah.
Not many. Maybe at school, but for the most part, they're always wearing uniforms. There's a scorekeeper. There's a clock. People paid to get it. Parents had to pay to get into the games. There's so much more organization now, and that does strip away from some of the organic leadership that can take place. Versus, I think about when I was 13, like you weren't playing in a basketball game that was organized unless it was basketball season. And I think there's so many good things when things aren't organized, but it's hard. Most kids now, their days they're scheduled from wake up to bedtime. They work hard. It's not a work ethic deal. It's just a very, very different form of hard work.
How do you, I guess, balance that? And do you try to get them breaks where they have time to have that free play?
Yeah. We try, and, we try and do things as a family where, that whether it's going to the beach or, playing in the front yard, or them just having friends over, where, there's an old school element to it. And sadly enough, you kind of have to organize that stuff. It doesn't just happen with, going out in the front yard and meeting buddies. That's just not what's taking place now, but we try and put those things in place. And, I'm proud that they're both hard workers, but, things are flying by. It's crazy. You blink and you feel like, gosh, did we enjoy all the moments that we should have enjoyed? And that's been the one neat thing about this, really, really tough situation in the world, is that it has caused everyone to press pause in one way or another. And, we've done puzzles and played board games and stuff that I don't know if we get to any of that if everyone's not at home. So there's been a lot of learning.
Yeah. You got to make the best out of a tough situation. Last couple of questions. Can you talk about the transition to D1 and the challenges that came with it? And then the final question is your plans and goals for CBU going forward? Because I know as a school, CBU has big plans, and I know you do as well.
Yeah, the transition's been it's been great fun. It's been really exciting. The thing that was really good was when we were Division II, our program was established, and we had great leadership in our locker room. And we felt like, even at that time, we were playing against Division I programs, and we were finding success. And we never, going all the way back to when I coached junior college, I just think like a great competitor is a great competitor, and he'll find a way to compete at every level. And I'm so grateful that we had that belief, because it played out. Because we've had guys that were, other people may have seen them as, or pigeonholed them as, hey, this guy's a Division II player, and they've moved forward and found great success. But we had a really good locker room with great leadership, and we had a culture where when we were getting ready to play, our guys believed we were going to win the game. And that's such a critical component of college basketball, that there's a belief, that permeates your entire program, because, having played 4 years of college basketball, it is so competitive, and you got to have a locker room that believes. So we were able to bring that part forward. And now we're, we really feel like we're getting great players, and there's a lot of exciting things happening at CBU. And I'm grateful that we're at a place where these guys are appreciated come game night, because when you work that hard, especially when you're coming, and you're an international player, you've seen college basketball, like that's not available everywhere in those age frames, from 18 to 22. That's what you want to play, and you want to play in packed arenas, with crowds that are going crazy. And, I'm grateful that we're in a place where that happens. And, it's not all about the crowd. It should be about the team. But the reality of it is, like, that's part of what makes it so special. And our guys appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that is a huge draw of growing up in Australia. I remember when I first started watching college basketball, and you're seeing the whole crowd jumping up and down, and it almost seems like another world. And to get over here and experience that was, unbelievable experience. What are your goals, I guess, going forward for CBU?
Well, we haven't won a championship yet at this level. We finished in second this year in the WAC. So, our goals are to become a championship program, and eventually find success in the tournament. And, I think when we do that, we're really in a unique spot, like with our geography, with our community, to be at a place in Southern California that has a community that supports us. The place is going to go crazy. And it's exciting for our guys, because there were guys that did great things in our program before them, and we stand on their shoulders, but there's so many things that haven't been done yet. And I think that's a really exciting thing to be part of as a player, is to do something that hasn't been done before. So we're trying to recruit guys that have great belief, and that, want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And it's a tremendous opportunity.
That's awesome, Croy. We'll leave it there. I really appreciate your time. I was really looking forward to this, and it was thanks for coming on the Deli podcast.
Yep. Say hi to Anna. Say hi to Anders.
I will. Hey guys, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel at Matthew Deli. And while you're there, check out the Deli podcast playlist for more episodes. Thanks for tuning in.